Getting towards the end here. So dealing with conflicts as a team, as a leader, as a follower, and as just a person on the team, you're always going to have interpersonal conflicts, right? So Peaches, how do you deal with these? And we'll start off as a leader. If you were the leader, how are you dealing with interpersonal conflicts? Not even maybe just yourself, but maybe people that are having interpersonal conflicts. What are some tips and tricks that you have to keep the team performing?
I kind of get everybody together in the same, if it's one or two or more people, then I just try and put it out in the open that way to try and alleviate any kind of gossip or he said, she said. Like one of the biggest things I think is the misunderstanding or the misinterpretation of intent. Somebody says something or somebody does something, they assume ill will, malicious intent, and like that's what you got to get out of there. Now, of course, somebody can lie about their intent, but usually you can kind of tell by the language that they use or the sequence of events of how things happen. You can tell what the intent was. Mm-hmm. But I think getting everybody down and no kidding, talking about it and addressing it is one of the ways that I like to use.
Yeah. So there's something called Hanlon's razor, and it's you never apply malice where incompetence could be the answer, right? That's a handy tool. Again, we talked about it earlier, we were talking about, some possibly negative aspects of our culture and, the larger military enterprise, and it's applying intent, right? Somebody does something, you're like, they did that on purpose to hurt me. Well, maybe they weren't thinking about you. Maybe they didn't have the experience. Maybe they didn't have the experience about you. Maybe they just did this thing because they thought that's what was right. And they didn't think about second or third order effects. And by the way, everybody listening to this has done that. You've gotten into an interpersonal conflict with your spouse, with a friend, with a family member, where they're like, I can't even believe you wouldn't think about me and you made this decision.
You knew that I went through this, or you knew that I'm like, dude,
no, I didn't. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Like, you're right. I do know that you went through this, mm-hmm. but it's not what I was thinking about in the time.
Right. Yeah. So that's great. As a leader, you want to get everybody together, just put it out in plain language. You try to respect other people's stuff. Like, hey, maybe you did know that this was a soft spot for you. Maybe you did know that this was a line for you. Maybe you didn't. Maybe that boundary needed to be established a little bit better, but I really like it. So as a follower, so let's say you're the person in the conflict. How can you behave in that conflict to make this better and move past it?
Try and remain calm. As soon as you start yelling or raising your voice, you've lost. Try and also take an objective look at it and see from the other person's perspective, and see if the language you used or the actions that you took, how they could be perceived from that person's point of view. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're accepting fault or anything like that. It just means that, like, hey, well, let me, from their perspective or their background or their whatever, I'm actually kind of not surprised that they thought that, even though that wasn't my intent. Like, sorry that's the way it happened, but like, here's why I did that and stuff like that. I can't think of a single disagreement in the team room or between a working group or a command team or whatever you want to call it that hasn't ended, with everybody's like, okay, like, that's fine. And again, you always have taken it out back with the boxing gloves, like in the end. Yeah. And again, every single time I've seen that, at the end of it, they're freaking hugging each other, and it's like, it's all good. So,
and more importantly, like, you're both, you look at each other and you're like, wow, this is really stupid. Like, now I'm hurt because we punched each other in the face, or, we got into some, jujitsu match, and now I'm hurt and I'm tired. And I realize it probably wasn't needed. Like, we didn't solve anything, and you're still my brother. And I can't believe that we did that. That's a good lesson too. One other wrinkle that you're going to have to put in here, as a follower, you might have a leader that is arbitrating this thing. Like, you might have somebody, if you have a disagreement with a team member, somebody else may be stepping in to go, hey, you're an idiot and you're an idiot, and I'm going to fix this for you because I can't have this happening in my team room. And there's a million examples of this happening, right? But as a follower, when you're in this thing, the added wrinkle here is that you have to be mature enough to listen to somebody's input, even if you think they're wrong, because a leader could totally come into this thing and they could read it wrong. They could come in and go, hey, you're at fault. You're not at fault. We're going to move past this. And if you're the one that's getting essentially blamed, or if you're the one that's hearing those hard languages from a leader, it's actually going to be worse if then you look at the leader and you're like, no, you're an idiot, and no, you're stupid. Like it just makes everything worse. So it's one of those things where, sometimes you could be right, you could be correct, and you could still be the one that everybody looks at and goes, hey, sorry, man, you handled this the wrong way, and
yep,
we got to move past it. Yeah.
Yep.
And man, that might happen. And you just got to, is this important? Is this the hill I'm going to die on? Is this a thing that we need to worry about? Like, whatever. And then kind of the third little wrinkle here, what happens if you're not involved at all? How can you support, like, let's say that two teammates have a serious issue. There's a bunch of interpersonal conflict. The leader steps in, handles the problem with the followers. What do you do as a teammate, just as a dude on team or dudette on team? What do you do after that?
Oh, there's a bunch of different things. You mean during it or after it?
After.
Oh, after it?
Well, let's go during. That's interesting. What during? What do you do?
I think you just, well, again, there's a couple different things you could do, not get involved because it has nothing to fucking do with you.
How about mind your business? Exactly. How about you stay in your lane, my guy? That's absolutely fantastic. Don't choose sides. This is not a, team A or team B sort of scenario. How about you just do me a favor and shut the fuck up?
Yeah. Afterwards, though, I think it's important to not ostracize somebody, because there are going to be times where that person, and I will not bring up his name, but there was, like, he was dealing with some TBI, PTSD stuff, and he was not talking about it, but we could all just kind of see it, and he was, sometimes he would lash out and stuff like that. And it's tough to work with somebody very closely that is going through with that, because oftentimes you're on the receiving end of that, and then it's the easy option is to just kind of distance yourself, and like you put up that barrier and just like, I'll deal with you with the minimum I have to deal with you. But other than that, like, I'm not going to chat with you.
Yeah.
But you're essentially making it worse, because you are now ostracizing them.
You're isolating them.
Yes.
You're supposed to insulate, not isolate. You're supposed to bring that dude in and go, hey, it might be uncomfortable, but we got to talk about this. You got to come in here. You can't just be like, all right, F you, you're out.
Yeah. Like, you've got to do that.
Yeah.
Even if you disagree with what they did, it's got to be all right, man, like, let's bring you in, let's mentor you or each other more, and then let's all get better from this.
Yep. And I'd say as a follow-on, when it's over, it's over. Yeah. There's going to be, you're going to joke about it. I'll just tell you straight up. Like, this is a positive and a negative thing. There are, things that happened in, on team that at the time were dramatic and they were emotional and it was a big deal. And then about 1 second of time passes when it's over or when it's resolved. And then you start making fun of each other for it. You're like, hey, remember the time you cried at the bar and we had to get you out of trouble? Like, everybody laughs. Okay. But there's a difference between having a moment and then joking about it later because everybody's moved on, and bringing up old shit. Yeah. It can't be a thing. Like, the next time that there's a blow up, that's a great, example of the guy that's kind of like lashing out. If it's over a specific thing and you guys work it out and you move past it, the worst thing that you can do is bring up that period in an unrelated next time. And let's say he does something completely different. You'd be like, oh, this is like the time you blew up and lashed out. Like, that's not helpful. Bringing up that old shit is not helpful. It's toxic. No. It's terrible.
Except for my Uber rating. If you ruined my Uber rating because I was nice enough to get you an Uber and send you back, and then you puked in their car, and now my Uber rating's on. I may bring that up a couple more times.
That's great. By the way, that's not me. That's not a shot at me. I've never done that to Peaches. I just want to put that out there. So
my Uber rating's not a 5.0 because of that.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
That's what happens when you're the non-drinker
Yeah.
around a bunch of dudes,
Bunch of bros.
and we're in Vegas,
Throwing it down.
and some people are ready to leave, or maybe not ready to leave. They should have left a while ago, because
some people should leave. They're not ready to leave, but they should leave.
Yeah. And then some people are not ready to leave, you know, and then you're like, all right, well, I'll get you an Uber, get you back. And then there's, Anyway.
You never have to worry about that with me, because I am the king of the Irish goodbye. There is a timer in my head now that I've grown up enough where I will reach a level of alcohol intake for the night, and something in my head goes, it's time for bed, big dog. I won't say anything to anybody. I'll just be like, hey, I'm very quietly get an Uber. I'm out. I've gotten a text before where they're like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you've been in the bathroom for a long time. I was like, Playboy, I'm in bed. Yeah. I'm in my house.